So, hi, everybody. Today I am interviewing Ross Hewitt, who is a retired physician who has a passion for the theater. And he turned those creative energies into filmmaking. And his first foray into films has resulted in a children's animated short film called Kris the Cat. We love that. He wrote and produced the short, which won numerous awards at film festivals and has quickly become an audience favorite. So that's quite a transition to go from being a doctor to going into the filmmaking field.
Yeah, I love stories.
What made you decide to make the switch?
I've been involved in theater and storytelling, all the while being a doctor at the same time. So I've acted in a bunch of shows, musicals, and plays over the years, and then I also wanted to kind of tell my own stories, and I started writing. And next thing you know, I had written a couple of full-length plays and some short plays. And from there, it morphed into writing short stories and flash fiction, which are very short stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Kris the Cat came about. It was originally a short story. And one of my playwright friends said, "You should make this into a movie." And I was like, really? and, then, and then I thought, you know what? As a first effort, maybe that would be a worthwhile endeavor just to see if I could do it. And that's what got me on that path.
That's cool. I don't know if you know this, but I'm also an actor. I've been a voice actor for 40 years. So I'm also into the theater, studied theater and did a lot of theater as well. And then added blogging is like kind of a second thing to do just because it's creative. But yeah, so kind of in the same mindset. What was your biggest challenge in becoming a film producer as a senior?
You would think that it wouldn't be a challenge, and that is having the patience to deal with bureaucracy. You would think that as you get older, you could handle that better. But in the beginning, I found it very frustrating. So, I'm an actor, and I believe in paying actors what they're worth.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to use union actors, or SAG actors, Screen
Mhm.
Actors Guild actors. And so I had to get permission from the union. And that required a mountain of paperwork,
Oh, I
uh,
know that.
and a lot of back and forth, because I was new to it. And
Mhm.
I didn't always understand their lingo and what they were asking for, and things that I didn't have. So I had to create a corporation to make the film. So, and they wanted to see all the documents. I understand what they're trying to do, right? Is protect actors, make sure that the business is legitimate, because sometimes actors can fall into a trap with bad producers, and then they don't get paid, and that's not what anyone wants. So
Mhm.
I understand the reason for it, but it was challenging, and I would say that that was the most difficult thing about it, was just the bureaucracy, and we also recorded the soundtrack of the dialogue during COVID.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was also a challenge, because the recording studio I wanted to use didn't have a formal written COVID policy. They were doing all the right things, but they didn't have a policy. So I ended up writing their policy for them so that I could get approved.
That's
And
amazing that you were in a studio at that time because everybody's been recording from home.
yeah, and I really wanted people together.
Hmm.
And actors work best when they're interacting with each other. And we
Sure.
had 6 actors that we were working with. And I mean, everybody wore masks. The narrator was in a room by herself. So all the precautions were followed, and even recording sound through the mask was very helpful in certain instances. So all of that worked out really well. But I think the actors really appreciated being together.
I was wondering about the masks. Yeah, because, sometimes it could sound muffled, but I guess it, eliminates the pops and things like that. It's sort of like wearing your own pop filter.
It worked out just really, really well. And we only did 3 takes maximum of any one scene in the film. So the actors were just fantastic.
That's great. Well, I applaud you for doing it union.
And I thought I would get a little bit more assistance from SAG, but I just
Well,
kept getting automated responses to questions. But eventually I figured it out.
well, sadly, that's been a problem with a lot of productions, and that's why so many of them have been going non-union, especially voiceover projects, because they don't want to deal with that whole, mountain of paperwork and everything. And it's sad because, the actors don't get the pension and health and all that stuff that they really need. But yeah, I applaud you for doing that. Where are you located?
I am in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Oh, okay.
But at the time that we created the film, I was in New York City. So
Mm.
we recorded it in New York.
So did you do it where you recorded the voices first and then did the animation afterwards? Or did you actually dub the animation?
We did the recording first.
Hmm.
And so that helped the animator and allowed him to match things like lip movements and things in the animation. And yeah, and then so the dialogue was recorded first.
Great, great. So how do you feel that, your life experience as a doctor, what kind of doctor were you, first of all? And how does that influence your creative work? Because there's sort of like a right brain, left brain kind of thing in a way.
Yeah, I've got a lot of different answers rolling around in my head, so I'll try to get them all out. In I was a infectious disease physician. I was not heavily involved in COVID because I was working at the STD clinic in New York City. So I was doing very specialized work. But I've taken care of a lot of people with AIDS and HIV over the years. The similarity is that as a doctor, you have to get the patient's story straight.
Hmm.
So, especially in infectious diseases where there's so much consideration given to timing of things, timing of symptoms, timing of exposures, timing of travel, timing of all of these things. So very early on, I was taught to create a chronology of events in my mind. And I think that skill really has helped me as a storyteller because once I get an idea for a story, then I almost automatically go into that kind of chronology mode for myself to figure
Wow.
out, okay, exactly when is this happening? When does that happen? That's a transferable skill in terms of storytelling. And even in terms of acting, you have to know what your role is in telling the story. And you
Hmm.
also have to get your own character's chronology correct, in your head so that you can put it all together. So it's amazing how that skill was able to transfer so well to storytelling. Yeah, playwriting and screenwriting.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of it that way. That's really interesting. Are you formally retired?
I hope people aren't too upset when I say this, but right now I just do insurance reviews part
Hmm.
time
Oh,
on
that's
the
okay. Hey, you
side.
gotta do what you gotta do, right?
So I try to say yes as much as I can, but sometimes I have to say no.
Yeah, yeah. How did you get involved with the theater while you are being a doctor? Because that's pretty intense, isn't it?
Well, it was, but um, you my philosophy is make time for the things that are important to you. And
Hmm.
so I was in plays in college while I was a pre-med student. While I was in medical school, we did You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and I played Linus. And so I always wanted to try to marry being a doctor and being an actor at the same time. So I had to take a break while I was in, very intensive training period,
Hmm.
which lasted for 5 years. And then after that, I started auditioning in the community, taking acting classes, and next thing you know, I was on stage and singing and acting and never looked back.
That's amazing. That's great. And all of this in New York?
Well, a lot of that was in Buffalo, New York. So I
Oh, okay.
ended up, even though I'm from New York City, I ended up going to Buffalo for training, and I lived there for 22 years.
Hmm.
Was a very active member of the theater community there. Then I moved back to New York in 2004, and I got into theater some more, uh, and did theater in New York as well.
Well, it was smart that you got a real job like a doctor. Some of us are wishing like, oh man, I wish I'd had a real job, right? Because it's so on and off all the time. So you worked in the theater. What made you decide to move into film and then also doing animated film, which is much more complicated in a way?
I think I just took it on as a challenge. Everything is headed toward film nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, we live in a TikTok, YouTube world. And so film is just kind of the way to go. And if you want to tell stories and you want to reach a broader audience, you've got to do film. Theater is great for local productions. You get a play done and you get 15 performances with 50 people each, and so 750 people have come to see your play, and that's wonderful. But you can multiply that by thousands when you're dealing with film, and so that's really the appeal.
Hmm.
And then also, once I realized I was telling a children's story, I felt it had to be in animation
Hmm.
because I grew up watching Looney Tunes and
Right.
cartoons myself, and always loved them. And so I wanted to. So that was another motivation for me to make my own cartoon.
That's pretty ambitious. So how did you get the team together to do that?
Well, sometimes you just get lucky. So I reached out and put it out there on the internet that I was looking for an animator. And I got a number of responses. And I said what I was looking for. And I asked them to create a mock-up of the main character and to
Hmm.
get an idea of what they were thinking about. And then I also looked at their resumes and their body of work
Uh-huh.
online, and I went with a young guy named Arnell Dime, who just drew a wonderful representation, very, very close to what I had in mind. And so he won the bid in terms of the animation. In terms of the director, we had a director and we had a sound designer. And so the director had directed one of my plays in New
Hmm.
York, and has directed a bunch of plays. So she knows a whole lot of actors.
Hmm.
And so between her and I, we were able to cast the film. We got a sound designer also from the play, from the theater company I was working with. I'd known her work before, and so I was very confident that she would add a lot to the film, which she did. And then finally, we needed an original score written for the film.
Uh,
What I encountered in my playwriting days is that getting permission to use previously recorded material requires using entertainment attorneys. I mean, there's just
mhm.
it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And so the easiest thing to do is hire a musician who will write original music for you. And that's
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
what I did. The director also knew of someone who had written for a couple of TV pilots. So he turned out to be terrific, and he wrote a terrific little score for the film.
That's amazing. And did the people that were working with you, had they done any film work at all? I mean, did they know the process of putting it together and editing and all that?
Actually, no. Except for the composer, the rest of
Hmm.
us were all new. So
Wow.
we did these 5-person Zoom calls, and we just went through the film as it evolved, every version with animator, all 5 of us online. So it was kind of a group effort, looking at details, things like where are the eyes of the character looking, in that
Yeah.
particular shot, things like that, little things.
So they're
Um,
matching. Yeah.
so we all just kind of, I think, learned together how to do it, and I'm very proud of what we came up with.
Yeah, that's quite a feat. So the actual Kris the Cat was based on a story, an Icelandic story. How did you happen to find that? Was that something that you knew about from your childhood, or did it just
No, what I can tell you I knew about my childhood is I knew something about cats, because I had
Oh
13 of them when we were growing up.
my gosh.
So cats taught me a lot about life in general. And
Hmm. They're the
um,
best actors, right?
perhaps I get my curiosity from them. I don't know. I forgot the question.
Oh no, where you got this
Iceland.
story from? Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I was writing short stories, and many times you get a prompt. So you get an idea. So there was an Icelandic festival in California, and they
Hmm.
were looking to publish stories about Iceland as part of a handbook that they were going to give out for the festival. So I like a challenge like that. So then I decided, well, what are the stories of Iceland? What are the famous folk tales? And I just looked them up. And one of the top 10 folk tales is about a commoner who brings a cat to the king's castle. And the king is so grateful that his rat problem is solved that he says, you can have land or you can marry my daughter. What do you want? And the commoner said, I'll marry your daughter. And eventually he becomes king himself. So it's really a story about practicality, that kind of Scandinavian practicality. When you live in those
Mhm.
cold climates, everything you do has got to make a lot of sense. So I thought that was an amazing story. But then I thought, well, what happened to the cat? And that was the genesis for writing this story. I was like, well, something happened to the cat. Let's figure out what happened to him. And that is the story of Kris the Cat. What happened to him?
So you actually wrote the story first, then you were the author of the story.
Yes. So I
Oh, okay.
wrote it first as a short story, and then COVID canceled the festival.
Oh man.
So I was left with this story that I really liked. And I had written another story called The Alligator and the Catfish.
Hmm.
And one of my playwright friends said, you ought to make a movie out of that, because it was all animal characters. You ought to make a movie
Yeah.
out of that. And so I thought, oh, well, that's a big job. But I bet I could make a movie out of Kris the Cat because it was short. And
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be an incredibly long movie. So it seemed like it could be a doable project. Um,
Right.
and it ended up turning out to be 13 and a half minutes.
Perfect. And so then you've been marketing it to festivals, or how are you distributing it?
Well, right now it doesn't have a distribution deal just
Mm-hmm.
yet,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it does have a website, kristhecat.net,
Mm-hmm.
all one word, and so it can be accessed through the website for people who want to see it. We are in the process of reaching out to various distributors right now, and
Mm-hmm.
hoping that someone will pick it up.
Well, sometimes some of those little short animations become like Academy Award nominees, for those independent types of animated films. I guess
Yeah,
if you,
so far I haven't gotten one of those awards yet. One of the qualifiers. There's a whole
yeah.
system of qualifying, but so far that hasn't happened. But I'm continuing to submit it to primarily children's film festivals around the world.
And you've won some awards from it, right?
Yes, we won Outstanding Children's Short from the Indie Shorts Film Festival.
That's
Um,
cool.
so very happy about that. And it's been accepted to a couple of other festivals as well. It made its world premiere in Dallas in January.
Hmm.
And it was also shown in Los Angeles in March.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good. So you're going all over.
We're trying to get as broad a exposure as we can.
So what kind of advice do you have for people that are, say, they're in our same age bracket or above or a little bit below, maybe over 50, who want to like switch their careers over to a creative space?
Well, I think you've got to first dabble in it, and you've got to see if it's something that you really like doing. There are classes out there. So recently, I took a class in filmmaking for seniors at a community organization in Buffalo, New York, where I happen to be spending some time.
Hmm.
And it's a video and media arts organization. And they had gotten a grant to teach those kinds of skills to seniors. And I was in a class with four other seniors, four or five. And we were all learning how to use your phone as a video camera, uh,
Right.
because the quality is so good now with phones. You don't need a $100,000 camera on your shoulder to film something now.
I know I've been doing that on my YouTube channel. I kept thinking, well, I need a real camera because they keep telling you to do that. And I'm going, I get better film on my phone and I can keep it in my purse. So it's much easier.
The software that exists out there has evolved over time so that it's much more accessible, much easier to use. 75-year-old people learning how to use this software and taking clips of video that they filmed and putting it together into a short little film. So it's definitely possible, and it's not as hard as you may think. I think, and it's not really that hard because we all have stories to tell. Um,
Hmm.
we can all sit around in the backyard and talk about Uncle Henry and the crazy things he used to do. And we all have those kinds of stories. So it's just a matter of putting them down on paper or outlining them somehow in your head, and then pursuing various ways to express yourself telling that story. And so it's not as hard as people may think.
Oh, no.
And I think you just have to dabble with it first, and then if it's something that you really like, then full steam ahead, and you see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you don't expect to become rich or anything right away, like
No,
unless you're lucky or something. But it's just if you really love doing it, it's a lot of fun and you never know what's going to happen.
There are so many film festivals and outlets for your work to potentially be seen
Hmm.
all over the world. So there's lots of opportunities to potentially share, your work with other people. And that's the fun part about it. Festivals are often looking for first timers.
Right. It's so much different than it was like, say, 20 or 30 years ago when things were on film and you really, you had to have a real camera and you had to have, real editing suite and the whole thing. Now everything's on computer. I mean, you can do just about anything. Some people do it all on their phone, which is amazing. I have a
Yes.
niece who does that. She just makes these amazing videos, and she's a vet, like a veterinarian, but she loves to do it. And she just, can do all kinds of stuff with drones and, whatever.
I
Yeah,
think, yeah, you just the technology is out there nowadays, much, much easier, much more accessible, for seniors in particular to tell stories.
and yeah, like you said, they have stories because they've had decades of life to live them.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
we don't want those stories lost either.
right.
We
So
want
what's
them to
next
live.
for you? What are your goals as far as being an actor or producer or whatever it is that you want to do?
Well, I'm going to continue to act in plays when I get the opportunity. So that is definitely something I will continue to pursue. But in terms of film, I would like to make a full length animated feature this time around.
Oh,
And
wow.
based on the story, The Alligator and the Catfish,
Hmm.
which has a kind of climate change, environmental theme kind of running through it. It's about a community of creatures who live in the Mississippi River.
Mm.
And again, it was inspired by a prompt, uh, which basically was write a story about the Mississippi River. And so I thought long and hard about it. And I thought, well, Tom Sawyer has already been written, can't write that story. Um, so what else could I come up with? And then I decided to focus on the creatures, and how in a community, in an ecological community, every creature has a role to play.
Hmm. Oh, that's nice. I
And
like that.
it really has a message about teamwork and the good of doing the right thing for the good of everyone rather than just for yourself.
I love that. That's
So
cool.
I'm really excited about that. I've begun writing that screenplay. So my goal is to get that screenplay done by the end of the year.
Nice. Very nice. Well, good luck with that. That sounds like a wonderful project. As far as the theater goes, I used to do a lot of theater before I started doing more film and got married and got pregnant and all that stuff. Because it didn't pay a whole lot, right? But I noticed that after COVID, it kind of killed a lot of theaters. Have you noticed that, or have you noticed that they've been coming back in where you are?
Yes, and yes.
Or...
I've seen theater companies get killed,
Mhm.
but I've also seen new ones arise. That kind of independent producing spirit has, I think, emerged as well. There was during COVID an intense period of writing new
Mhm.
material because we all had nothing else to do but sit home and write.
Right, exactly.
So that's what a lot of us did. I wrote a play during COVID that I hope, I'm continuing to refine right now. But a lot of us just wrote. So I think the theaters that suffered the most were ones that had a space that they needed to fill. So they had their
Mhm.
own building, their own actual theater, and some of those got lost because they couldn't keep the doors open being empty. And
Yeah.
and whatever assistance there was for small businesses, it just didn't make it. It wasn't enough. But the ones who were able to survive are have come back pretty much in full force. I think down here in Florida, slowly but surely, as COVID has lessened, audiences are returning to the theater. Yes, a lot of people wear masks now, but that's fine. If you want to wear a mask, and you can still come
Mhm.
to the show. And so I think theater is on its way back, but it was a very difficult time for actors and everyone involved with theater, crew, the whole
Oh
bit.
yeah, yeah. I know some of them were doing shows on Zoom, but it's not quite the same thing, or they were doing
Oh,
readings or things like that.
yes, yes. I did a Zoom reading, and as an actor, I didn't like it.
Yeah, yeah. That reminds me, I did a blog post. I interviewed somebody that does she has like a company that has senior plays, like plays for seniors, and she has this whole resource center. So they go out to not like assisted living, but like, retirement communities and things like that. But I'll have to give you her name because, if you write a play that it can go into her category, I think you can make royalties and stuff on that.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, she was really interesting. She's a fun lady. But yeah, I'll send that to you.
Appreciate
But
that.
yeah, so thank you so much. This has been really interesting and congratulations on your achievement. That's quite a thing to do, when you're over a certain age.
Thank you very much. I encourage people to go to the website, kristhecat.net, and check it out.
Okay, good. I'll make sure that they get your link and all that stuff.